Hello, welcome all. Today I'm here with a new chapter. Chapter first, The Portrait of a Lady, written by Ch-1 Singh, and this chapter has been taken from your book Hornbill. Before you explain the chapter, let me tell you something about it. As the title suggests, portrait of a lady. Portrait here means picture or a photograph. So here he speaks of a picture of a lady. The picture of a lady, that is, he has put his granny here, and he has put his granny at the center of the story and nicely crafted it. Nicely crafted, or nicely has nicely given a touch and finished it in a very delicately and very nice way. The story can be divided into few parts. In the first phase, the author is seen with his granny, and this time is spent there at the village. There at village, Granny was his guardian, and she took a very good care of the author, his needs, his studies, and everything. She provided him the right upbringing, or the right nurturing. In the second phase, they shift over to a city. They move out to a city, though the granny was not willing to go there, but she had to go because there was no other member in the family, and he had to go with her son there. So there, life suddenly got transformed, changed for the author. He now got a different kind of education which was not liked by Granny. And in the time, in the course of the time, he got detached, or he started getting detached from his granny. That is, there started getting a kind of gap between the two, granny and the author. The author was now not so close to Granny. Now there came a phase when he completed his studies and had to go abroad for his further studies. So this is another phase. And at the end, when he returned from there, and he was received by everyone. Granny was also there, but she didn't go to receive him. And there, his homecoming was celebrated. There was party, there was celebration, and there at the party she enjoyed a lot. She danced, she enjoyed, and the next day only she fell ill, and then her condition deteriorated, and then she died. So these are some phases, or some say these are the parts into which this story can be divided. So let's now go through it, and let me explain you now. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. So grandparents are always old. His grandmother was also old, like everybody else. Okay, so Granny was old like everybody else's. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her, and the author, that means the author was 20 years of age when she died, and for the 20 years he found his granny the same way. There was not a slight change in her appearance for the 20 years. He found her same way. He found her appearance to be exactly the same. Uh, no change had taken place, no change had come about her appearance. Okay, then um, she had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years, okay, that I know her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. And now people say because he found his granny the same way always, 20 years, if he saw her through 20 years and all the 20 years she remained the same, so it was very hard to believe that she ever had a husband because her image, the first image of her was that she was old, wrinkled face, and when she died, she remained the same. So it was very hard to believe, tough to believe that she was once very young and pretty, and that she had a husband, she was married to a man. It was very tough, very hard to believe. Her image was that of an old lady, for the author, obviously. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and a loose fitting clothes. So there was the picture, portrait of author's grandfather in the drawing room right above the mantelpiece. Or there in the drawing room there was the mantelpiece, there is, or you can say some fireplace was there, and above the fireplace there was some kind of shelf was there, and above the shelf there was on the portrait of grandfather. He wore a big turban and loose fitting clothes. Also he was found as the picture, as the picture was there. So the picture the grandfather was seen to be wearing turban and loose fitting clothes. He wore loose fitting clothes in the picture. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He had long white beard, and that beard covered most part of his chest. He looked at least 100 years old, and in that appearance he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or or children. And in that appearance, it was very tough to imagine that he ever had a wife or he could have children. It's very tough because the image presents that for such a man there cannot be wife, 100 years old, cannot be wife, cannot have children. So what else? Let's say he looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren, as his image gave the impression that he could only have lot and lots of grandchildren. No children possible for such a man, such an old man. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. So the thought that grandmother was young and pretty, that was thought provoking. That caused a lot of thinking, lot of things going in the mind. That agitated the mind and caused the mind to think how she looked and how she was when she was young. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child, and when she was a child, she used to play a lot of games. On many games that she played, she now described or she now discussed all those games that she played during her childhood days. That is, she shared everything with her grandchildren, the games that she used to play as a child and all. Now, that seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. And it seemed quite absurd, it seemed quite below her dignity, because for an old man playing games which are meant for children, which are meant for kids, was something that you cannot imagine, you cannot think of that such an old lady once played such kind of games. So that was some kind of thing that was hard to imagine, and they treated such things as fables, stories, fables are prophets. She used to tell us, and they treated children, treated grandchildren, treated those stories as stories are prophets. She used to tell us. That is, she was treated as prophets, and her stories were the stories of prophets. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her appearance was that she was short, she was fat, she was bent, slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere, and she had wrinkles, lots of wrinkles on her face, and the crisscross marks ran from one end to the other, everywhere, all over her face. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her, and it was always certain they could only imagine her to be old. They could not imagine that, excuse me, she had once been young. This is all for now. Thank you.